Hey friends, Jason Womack here, my friends, and please call me JW. I was able to meet with several of your colleagues. For those of you who were with us in the room there in Building 803, what a journey. We had about 80 minutes together to do some listening, to do some writing, to do some small group sharing, and then for those of you who did volunteer to share in front of us, in front of the whole group, with what you're sitting with, I want to say thank you. I mentioned throughout that hour and a half that there are three things that we could do to change a life, change our lives, change a friend's life, change a family member's life. If you know someone who is in a position to change life, to create something more than what they've got right now. And by the way, more doesn't necessarily mean that things are not great the way they are. More simply means that over there, as the poet Rumi used to say, beyond the field of right and wrong, of of expectation and anticipation, out beyond that field, there's another place, and I'll meet you there. Let's have a conversation there. And that's really what we did. We talked about this concept of the three things. And for this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give those kind of the bluff on this entire thing, and then I'll just share a couple of ideas. There might be some times where I ask you to hit pause on the video. Do that, and I'll give you the time period to hit pause for. My guess is that if you could carve out of your day right now about a half an hour, that would set you up to, I'm not going to say catch up, or it won't be a full review, whether you were there or not. But I figured I would just share a couple of the things on my mind. So I talked about these three things, and as you're sitting where you're sitting, if you have a notebook handy, so Doc got you all a paperback notebook. I'll refer to the notebook that I use and have been using. I've got a whole shelf of them down there. Those are my regular everyday. If I'm in a meeting, I have a notebook. If I'm standing at my computer, I have a notebook. If I'm basically, there will be some place and a tool where I can write something down with the pen that I'm holding. On that shelf up there is my daily journal, and that goes back to 1997. So a lot of notebooks there. If I have time today or the next time we talk, if you're interested in hearing about the daily journaling I do, I can absolutely share that with you. So, of the three things that you can do to change a life, the first one I always say is you can make awkward eye contact. For those of you who are in the room together, you remember I asked you to stand up and I asked you to look around the room. What were there, about 60 people or so in the room? I said, make eye contact with someone for 3 seconds. In fact, if you're in a place right now where you're watching this with earpods or you're watching this at a computer, if you can hit pause and go into another room, pretend you're doing something. Just see if you can look at someone and hold their gaze for 3 seconds. Hit pause and do that now. So, look, whether you took advantage of that little opportunity or not, totally up to you. This was fascinating. After I asked people to stand up, make awkward eye contact, I asked them to switch their gaze 3 times. And then I asked the next person that you lock eyes with, would you please stay for 10 seconds, looking into their eyes? Now, if you were in the room and someone who was not in the room can come talk to you, will you tell them what happened? What I remember happening is I turned to the room and I said, hey, so for those of you who made eye contact, you noticed someone across the room. You noticed them for 10 long seconds. I asked the room straight up. I said, how many of you, your heart rate increased a little bit and the temperature of the room lifted? And I had several people raise their hands. And so, of course, my question is, well, why? Why did looking at someone and actually seeing them, actually noticing the person, not the doing, but the human being, why would your heart rate increase? Why would the temperature of the room go up? I'll leave it to you to experiment with this next time you get to the shop. Yeah, I challenge you. The next time you get to work, I challenge you. The next time you go to Costco, I challenge you to make eye contact and let them be the first one to look away. Now I'm going to jump to the side because I introduced a concept. It's a question. You notice I'm all about the questions. I introduced this concept. I asked the group. I said, "Hey, how many of you have ever asked someone a question and to your face they lied to you?" And I remember a couple people looked at me like this, and I said, "This has happened to me." I said, "I have asked someone, 'How are you?' and they lied to me straight to my face with a smile." All right? I'm in the Air Force. Come on, guys. If I walk in, if I introduce myself to you, "Hey, I'm J-Dub. What's your name?" and you give me your name, and I say, "How are you?" What does the Air Force answer? What does the Air Force answer? Good, good to go. Never been better. Living the dream. I've heard all these things. Have you ever gotten that intuitive sense? Have you ever gotten that little spidey sense? Has your heart ever said, "I don't know if they're fine"? So what do? We ask them a second question. Sounds a lot like the first question, but it's a little bit different pronunciation. If I ask, "How are you?" and you lie to me, I'm going to ask you the second question. I'm going to say, "How are you?" And I might even do that with my hand. Now, every now and then, and you've had this too, every now and then that will open up the gate. That will open up the aperture. I want you to hit pause right now. I want you in your notebooks, grab a 3x5 piece note card, grab a piece of paper out of the printer. I want you to hit pause. I want you to make a list of 10 people that you could go ask that question to who might actually not tell you that they're fine. Go. Look, totally up to you if you want to do these activities. That notebook, the power of a blank page is huge. Why? Because it lets you see what you say to yourself. It lets you see what you say to yourself. Now, if you made a list of a few people, and if you're intuitive, if your heart, if the back of your mind has that little bit of tingle, and if you think there might be someone who, if I asked them, "How are you?" they might not come back to me fine, I want you to stop this video right now. I want you to Facebook Live them. I want you to call them. I want you to go knock on their door. Sometimes someone will lie to me twice, so I have to ask them a third time. "How are you?" They'll say fine. "How are you?" They'll say fine. And then I'll come in and I'll change it's going to sound a lot like the first two questions. I'll change the question. "How are you?" And notice the end of my question is not a question. All right? When you end a sentence with a downward intonation, that's a period. That's a dot. That means I know that that person is not fine, and I will be here as long as you need. That leads me to the next piece of what we talked about. So in your notebook, what I challenge you to do is to notice those 10 people that you wrote their names down. Then I want you to do another list. And here's what I introduced to the CCAF group that I got to serve there in Building 803. I said, "Will you please make a list?" I want to make sure that I get this right. I'm looking at the slide deck. I said, "Please rough draft a list of 10 things that you care about." Okay, so this will be the third time. I've only got a few more of these. This will be the third time. I want you to hit pause, and there in your notebook, if you want to do bullets or numbers, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10, I want you to write down 10 things that you care about. Ready, go. All right, gang. So here's the deal. I asked the audience, I said, "Please raise your hand if coming up with 10 things that you care about was actually challenging." And I had quite a few people raise their hands. And I have to wonder why. It's your blank piece of paper. It's your notebook. It's your handwriting, right? You can write down 10 things you care about. You could tear that page out of the notebook and you could shred it. You could burn it. You could throw it away. What's stopping you? This is my question. What is stopping you from writing what you care about on a piece of paper? It's fascinating. I mean, we should. We're humans. We're Americans. We should be able to write a whole long list of what we care about. Why do we censor? Why do we why do we hold ourselves back? So here's what we did, and here's what I'll challenge you to do. Go show your list to someone who knows you. Go to the office and pick of the 10 things. Pick a couple of the ones that you'd be willing to share. You're not going to want to share everything. I wouldn't share everything. I don't know you yet, right? I'm not going to share everything that I care about because some things they're not ready to go public yet. But there's going to be somebody, at least with yourself, at least with the leader in the mirror. I'm looking up at the window. What I'm going to ask you to do then is to come up with a couple of the cares that you would be willing to share. Because here's the deal. Once I make awkward eye contact with you, if you let me in, once we lock eyes, once we notice one another, now what we can do is we can go have a meaningful conversation. Okay? We can talk about something that's meaningful. And this is fast, right? I'm driving to work. I get to the gate. I look up. I could have a meaningful conversation. Maybe the gate guard notices the music that I'm playing. Maybe I notice and thank them for standing out in the cold, right? We could have a human connection, not just a doing connection, but a being connection. If you think about this, there's going to be someone tonight. There's going to be someone this weekend. For those of you who are going on TDY or your TDY is just canceled, or you have your umpteenth Teams call that you have to be on. You have the opportunity to have a meaningful conversation. Now, I did make a plea. I made an ask of the audience yesterday. I said, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to experiment. I want you to play around with moving. We'll see how much of this makes it into the video. But what I want you to do is I want you to move from the golden rule. So for those of us who were brought up with the golden rule, what I'm going to ask you to do is to move that over to what I was taught is called the platinum rule. And by the way, I'm applying these to conversations. So have a meaningful conversation. And what I'm saying here is if I were to apply the golden rule to conversation, sure, treat others as I want to be treated. That's the golden rule. Treat others as I want to be treated. That's the golden rule. Talk to others about what's interesting to me. I don't know. I hope I just broke some of the logic. So when I get into a meaningful conversation, it's actually a contest between me and my sparring partner of how do we get the other one to apply the platinum rule. Now, the platinum rule that I was taught is treat others as they would like to be treated. So I am going to treat you as a professional. I'm going to treat you as a military member. I'm going to treat you, if you're a spouse, as a parent, if you're a parent, as a parent, if you're an athlete, as an athlete. I'm going to treat you as you want to be treated. I'm going to have a conversation with you about stuff that's interesting to you. And here's my hope, is that in the dance of a conversation, we can be doing that together, right? We can be working back and forth to find out, hey, what do you care about? Hey, what do you care about? Hey, what do you care about? And we can pass that back and forth. Hey, do you need some help? Hey, do you need some time? How can we do that together? By the way, someone's always going to ask, but if all I'm doing is talking about what's interesting to them, what do I get to talk about? That's their responsibility. That's why you need to learn this stuff together. That's why you need to raise the flag or invite your friends to a Zoom coffee before you start work one morning, or a Zoom happy hour. I'm observing dryuary up till right now. It's the 13th. So, let's see if I can make it the next 15 days or whatever. Meet, notice, have a meaningful conversation. Find out what people care about. Find out what's interesting to them. Okay, that leads me to the third thing that you can do to change a life. But before I do that, I'm going to get you one of the activities. This will be the second to the last, I think. The second to the last time I'm going to ask you to hit pause. Here's what I need you to do. Grab your notebook. Okay, hold it up so I can see it. I know it's a recording, but you're all used to this with the digital environment. Will you please write the letter C in the top left of that piece of paper? Okay, and then go all the way to the bottom. Will you please write the letter E in the bottom left of the piece of paper? Because what I want you to do is I want you to separate out those four letters, C, A, R, E. So I want E down towards the bottom. I want R, right, maybe 3/4 of the way down, and then I want A, 1/2 of the way down, right, and then I want CARE. And here's the deal: will you hit pause, and will you come up with 2, 3, 4 words to describe a culture of care? And each word starts with that letter. So, what does a culture of care look like that starts with a C? What does a culture of care look, sound, and feel like that begins with an R? Whenever you're done with that, come on back and I'll finish up this third one. So here's what I know. In a conversation, you are going to have the opportunity to share. And I'm going to do this backwards. I've never done this backwards, so bear with me here. I'm going to make eye contact. I'm going to notice the person on the other side of the screen. I'm going to notice the person that I work with. I'm going to notice my spouse. Then we're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about what's interesting to the other person. Okay? Your job, if we get to meet, if we go for a walk around the building, right? Socially connected, physically distant, all that. Your job is to get me to talk about what means something to me. My job is to get you to talk about what's interesting to you. And now we can have a dance. Then what's going to wind up happening is at some point in time, you're going to come up with a idea, suggestion, recommendation, mentoring, coaching, a teachable moment. And I'm going to ask you to hold it when it's appropriate. Might not always be appropriate, right? Sometimes I need to intervene right now. And then there's the other X% of the time. And here's my challenge to every single one of this. I'm doing it right now. I am going to appropriately find a way, appropriately, to follow up. This means that I might be in a meeting with you. I might be in a conversation with you. You might be sharing something. You might be sharing a personal thing, a professional thing. You might be talking about a challenge you're facing or an opportunity that you're looking toward. And I might have the perfect book that you need to read, the perfect TED Talk you need to watch. I might know someone and I could put you two on an email and I could introduce you and it would change your life. I have to wait. I challenge myself to wait. Because what I know is if I get into a conversation, I dive deep into a conversation, I try and fix everything, and then I try and move on, all I've done is I've just given my conversation partner more should. And I don't want you to should on yourself. It's a negative experience. Now, granted, there are going to be times when right now, I need to jump in and handle something. The other X% of the time. I teach an 8-day course over at Building 803. It's called the Leader Development Course for Squadron Command. Right now, I've got officers, I've got enlisted, I've got directors, civilians, I've even got lead volunteer spouses. And I'm telling you, over 8 days, the conversations that ensue in that classroom, on Zoom right now, but we'll be back some point in the future. Those conversations, there are so many times. And I'll be very transparent with you. As I watched the clock yesterday, we started at 1500 and I knew I needed to be done by 1630. I watched the clock at 1623. I had the idea. And I parked it because I get 2 more sessions with you. I get 2 more 90-minute sessions. And what I know is that if I overwhelm and I try and give you everything, then that will have been too much. So your last pause exercise, and this one might take a little bit longer. What I invite you to do is to open your notebook, find a blank page, and ask yourself, what could I notice? Who could I make awkward eye contact with? What thing out there deserves some of my attention? Go find out what means something to someone. Go find out what's important to them. Teach them this model. Show them this video. Let them hear themselves talk out loud. And all you need to do is listen. Maybe drop a question in there. Not a question to get them to fix. Not right now. Why? Because you know if you listen hard enough, or as Chief Goldfein used to say, if you squint with your ears, you're going to hear something and you're going to be able to follow up with them later on. There's a lot more that we talked about, but your last process of today is to let yourself see in your own journal, what could I notice? What meaningful conversations can I initiate? And what can I do to follow up with people that I've been connecting with over the past, you name it, day, week, month, quarter, year, career? I love you. I'm amazed by you. I am here to support you in any way I can. If that support is very limited, meaning I'm going to come by a couple of more Tuesdays and I'm going to share my heart with you, if that support is maximized, you've got my email address. In my email is my phone number. If you need anything, I'm in the global, or use my au.af.edu address. It's jason.womack. How I can serve, how I can help, how I can work with you. I would love to share a conversation where we talk about what's meaningful for you and maybe find some ideas that you could enact on to follow up with that. Hey, thank you for everything. I look forward to seeing you. I challenge you to wonder, what do I care about? I want you to wonder this. What do I care about? And who could I share that with so that we grow together? Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day wherever you are. I'll see you soon.